Hey guys, welcome back. So in this session, we will see very important Microsoft Azure Glossary of Terms. It's like a dictionary of cloud terminology on the Azure platform. So before starting any new technology or learning a new language, it's always suggested to understand the terms involved in that particular domain. So this Microsoft Azure Glossary is a short dictionary of cloud terminology for the Azure portal, for the Azure platform. So first term is account. An account that's used to access and manage an Azure subscription. It is often referred to as an Azure account, although an account can be any of these: an existing work, school, personal Microsoft account, and others. You can also create an account to manage an Azure subscription when you sign up for the free trial. Then we have API app. It's just another name for the app service app. So we will see what is app service app. The compute resources that Azure App Service provides for hosting a website or web application, web API, or mobile app backend. App service applications are also referred to as app services, web apps, API apps, and mobile apps. Then we have availability set, a collection of virtual machines that are managed together to provide application redundancy and reliability. The use of an availability set ensures that during either a planned or unplanned maintenance event, at least one VM is available. Then we have Azure Classic Deployment Model. One of two deployment models used to deploy resources in Azure. Some Azure services support only the Resource Manager deployment model. Some support only the Classic deployment model, and some support both. The documentation for each Azure service specifies which model they support. Then we have Azure command line interface. The command line interface that can be used to manage Azure services from Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Some service features can be managed only via powerful shell or the command line interface. Then we have Azure PowerShell. It's a command line interface to manage Azure services via a command line from Windows PCs. Some services or service features can be managed only via PowerShell or the CLI. Next, we have Azure Resource Manager Deployment Model. One of the two deployment models used to deploy resources. In Microsoft Azure, some Azure services support only the resource manager deployment model. Some support only the classic deployment model, and some support both. The documentation for each Azure service specifies which model they use. Then we have fault domain. It's the collection of virtual machines in an availability set that can possibly fail at the same time. An example is a group of machines in a rack that share a common power source and network switch. In Azure, the virtual machines in an availability set are automatically separated across multiple fault domains. Then we have Jio. It's a defined boundary for data residency that typically contains two or more regions. The boundaries may be within or beyond national borders and are influenced by tax regulation. Every geo has at least one region. Examples of geos are Asia Pacific and Japan. They're also called geography. Next, we have Jio Replication. It's a process of automatically replicating content such as blobs, tables, and queues within a regional pair. Then we have image. It is a file that contains the operating system and application configuration that can be used to create any number of virtual machines. In Azure, there are two types of images, VM image and OS image. A VM image includes an operating system and all disks attached to a virtual machine when the image is created. An OS image contains only a generalized operating system with no data disk configurations. Then we have limits, the number of resources that can be created or the performance benchmark that can be achieved. Limits are typically associated with subscriptions, services, and offerings. Then we have load balancer, a resource that distributes incoming traffic among computers in a network. In Azure, a load balancer distributes traffic to virtual machines defined in a load balancer set. A load balancer can be internet facing or it can be internal. Then we have mobile app, another name for the app service app. Next we have is offer. It's the pricing, credits, and related terms applicable to Azure subscription. Then we have portal, the secure web portal used to deploy and manage Azure services. The next is region, an area with a geo that does not cross national borders and contains one or more data centers. Pricing, regional services, and offer types are exposed at the region level. A region is typically paired with another region, which can be up to several hundred miles away. Regional pairs can be used as a mechanism for disaster recovery and high availability scenarios. You can also refer to location for more information. Then we have resources, an item that is part of your Azure solution. Each Azure service enables you to deploy different types of resources, such as databases or virtual machines. Then we have resource groups, a container in Resource Manager that holds related resources for an application. The resource group can include all of the resources for an application or only those resources that are logically grouped together. You can decide how you want to allocate resources to resource groups based on what makes the most sense for your organization. Then we have resource manager template. It's a JSON file that declaratively defines one or more Azure resources and that defines dependencies between the deployed resources. The template can be used to deploy the resources consistently and repeatedly. Then we have resource provider. It's a service that supplies the resources you can deploy and manage through Resource Manager. Each resource provider offers operations for working with the resources that are deployed. Resource providers can be accessed through the Azure portal, Azure PowerShell, and several programming software development toolkits. Then we have role. It's a means for which controlling access that can be assigned to users, groups, and services. Roles are able to perform actions such as create, manage, and read on Azure resources. Then we have service level agreement. It's the agreement that describes Microsoft's commitments for uptime and connectivity. Each Azure service has a specific SLA. This service level agreement is the agreement that describes Microsoft's commitments for uptime and connectivity. Each Azure service has a specific SLA. Then we have shared access signature. It's a signature that enables you to grant limited access to a resource without exposing your account key. For example, Azure Storage uses SaaS to grant client access to objects such as blobs. Then we have storage account. It's an account that gives you access to the Azure blob, queue, table, and file services in Azure Storage. The storage account name defines the unique namespace for Azure storage data objects. Then we have subscription. It's a customer's agreement with Microsoft that enables them to obtain Azure services. The subscription pricing and related terms are governed by the offer chosen for the subscription. Then we have tag, an indexing term that enables you to categorize resources according to your requirements for managing and billing. When you have a complex collection of resources, you can use tags to visualize those assets in the way that makes the most sense. For example, you could tag resources that serve a similar role in your organization or belong to the same department. Then we have update domain. It's the collection of virtual machines in an availability set that are updated at the same time. Virtual machines in the same update domain are restarted together during planned maintenance. Azure never restarts more than one update at a time. It is also referred to as upgrade domain. Then we have virtual machine. It's the software implementation of a physical computer that runs an operating system. Multiple virtual machines can run simultaneously on the same hardware. In Azure, virtual machines are available in a variety of sizes. Then we have virtual machine extension, a resource that implements behaviors or features that either help other programs work or provide the ability for you to interact with a running computer. For example, you could use the virtual machine access extension to reset or modify remote access values on an Azure virtual machine. Then we have virtual network. It's a network that provides connectivity between your Azure resources that is isolated from all other Azure tenants. An Azure VPN gateway lets you to establish connections between virtual networks and between a virtual network and an on-premises network. You can fully control the IP address blocks, DNS settings, security policies, and route tables within a virtual network. So Azure Virtual Network is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. It enables many types of Azure resources such as Azure virtual machines, to securely communicate with each other, the internet and on-premises networks. Virtual network is similar to a traditional network that you would operate in your own data center, but brings with it the additional benefits of Azure's infrastructure, such as scale, availability, and isolation. The Azure Virtual Network enables Azure resources to securely communicate with each other, the internet and on-premises networks. Key scenarios that you can accomplish with a virtual network include communication of Azure resources with the internet, communication between Azure resources, communication with on-premises resources, filtering network traffic, routing network traffic, and integration with Azure services. Then we can communicate with the internet. All resources in a virtual network can communicate outbound to the internet by default. You can communicate inbound to a resource by assigning a public IP address or a public load balancer. You can also use public IP or public load balancer to manage your outbound connections.